Hi guys. So today I'm gonna talk about how to declare and initialize variables. What are the type of the data that you can initialize, and what are the rules that you need to think about when you're giving a name to the variable. So how to declare? So just give the name and tell the data type, and that's all. That's how you declare a variable. And now you can give a value to the variable, and that's all. Now to initialize a variable, you just combine two of these things. So int y is equals to 2, and that's all. That's how you initialize a variable. And I know I've only talked about integer, but there's a lot more type of variables that you can assign. So let's talk about long. So for integer, right, there's naturally a limit to the magnitude. So this is actually the limit. So integer can be a negative and can be a positive number also. So this is actually the limit. So if you try to give a larger value, yeah, the compiler doesn't uh, accept it. Like let's see what's the limit. Mm, ah, So this where you already reached the limit already, where the compiler will tell the integer number is just too large. In this case, instead of int or integer, you can use long, which is basically a integer with a higher limit of the magnitude. So long. Also, if you're using long, you need to add l, a small l at the end of the number, and that is all for long. And for double or float, you can use both of these if your number has a decimal point. So let's use float. Let's say 2.32, and just like long, you need to add f at the end of the number. In long you add l, right? So for float you need to add f. So this is how you initialize a float number. And the difference between float and double is the float can hold a smaller value, and double can hold a larger value. So for float is actually a 32-bit number, and for double is actually 64-bit. So double a is equals to 2.323, and that's all. Uh, for long and float, you need to add the small letter, which is L and F, but for double or int, you don't have to add the I or D. And now for Boolean. So in programming, right, you kind of use two values quite a number of times. You use it in a lot of cases, which is true and false. And what are the meaning of true and false is basically it's what is true and what is false. It's one is right and another one is wrong. If it's true, then do that thing. If it's false, then just don't do it. Or you can actually manipulate the scenario also. But you will use this value, just true and false, in your programming. Let's say while true, system hello world. So I haven't talk about a while loop, but it's something like this. As long while something is true, you print hello world on this console, and since you put true here, it's gonna print hello world forever. So it's kind of like an infinite loop. And by the way, while, for, these are all considered loops. So while loop, so in this case, this will become an infinite loop, and if I don't stop it, and then the app might crash. So this is where you kind of use this true and false. So let's say instead of telling just true, I would boolean x is equals to 2 is smaller than 3. Sorry, value, and I put a value here. Okay, what do you think the value is gonna hold? Like, what do you think this variable is gonna store? Is 2 is smaller than 3? Well, obviously, yeah. So that means this value is gonna store true. So now the system out, the hello world gonna be printed forever. But if I change it smaller than to larger than, so if 2 is 2 larger than 3, well, no, that means the value is false. So while false, that means it will never be reprinted. So in this is not where you kind of use true or false, but just giving you an example where you can use it. So in you will use true and false in a lot of cases, but don't worry about that. I'll give you a lot of examples in the future cases, future videos. But this boolean data type is just to hold two values, true or false. That's all. Okay, let's talk about cha. Cha basically stands for character. So um, the variable can hold one character. So I can either hold a, or it can hold a capital A, or it can hold a capital B, or it can hold a small c. So it can hold one single character. If you try to hold more than one, then it will be an error. Let's see what's the unclosed character. I don't know what that means, but basically means you can only hold one character. And all of these are actually called primitive primitive data types. So other than this, all data types are considered reference data types. So I haven't talked about what's the difference, but one of the examples of reference data type is string. So string is basically where all the character, right, are concatenated. I think so. Yeah. It's a basically combination of characters. So you can give a word or a sentence. You can give a very long paragraph, anything. So you can tell I am smart. So here I gave a bunch of characters stringed into one kind of something. So that's the meaning of string, where it's just a bunch of characters. And this is actually one of the examples. String is actually one of the examples of reference type. And later in a video, I'll explain what's the difference between reference and primitive type. So there are actually some rules when you are giving name to these variables. First rule is you cannot start it with numbers, so you cannot tell 1 3 is wrong. Second is if your variable is a word, like here, you cannot give a space between, and that's wrong too. But let's say your yeah, another one. Usually when you're giving a name, the first letter will usually be small. So that's just a convention. You don't have to give a small. You can give a big alphabet too. Doesn't matter. But the convention is just use a small letter. So let's say your variable name has two words. So let's say first name, right? So string first name is equals to sorry, I'm using the same name again, but Newton. Let's say you have to use this name. You don't want to use other names, so you have two choices. Actually there's only one choice. You can add those both words into one and just call it first name. But obviously it's harder to read, right? Because you don't know which is first and which is second word, right? So what you can do, and these are just some of the methods that programmers use. First is start the second or third any the following words with capital. So now you can clearly see what is the second word. So if you have another word here, then start with start with a capital letter too. Or the second method is, instead of capital, you can put an underscore. Maybe is this one more clearer to see, but yeah, this is just basically your preference. So that's all about variables, and next video I'm going to talk about what's the difference between reference type and primitive type. And thank you.